Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, geeks and nerds and ambassadors everywhere, and welcome back to the Ambassadorial Wing. And it is Friday night. It is 7 p.m. It's time to party. To kind of paraphrase one of my all-time favorite movies, that of course being Wayne's World. And welcome to the end of the line. Not for the channel, just for this review series. Tonight we are going to be wrapping up the X-Men review series, and tonight we are going to be discussing, I think, one of the hallmark, high benchmark entries in this series. We are going to be, of course, discussing Logan. But before we get into the discussion, a few points of housekeeping. Make sure you smash that like button. Make sure you share this out with all of your Marvel friends, your X-Men fans, your Hugh Jackman fans, wherever they're a fan of in this particular instance. Tell them to get on over here to the Ambassadorial Wing and tell them this is where the party is. Tell them this is where we're going to have a good discussion tonight about Logan. And of course, if this is your first visit to the Ambassadorial Wing, thank you for being here tonight. Make sure you smash that like button. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. We are closing in on 500 subs. We are at 490. Make sure you hit that notification bell so that you can be updated when I upload or when I go live. And, with all that being said, thank you for being here. Let's jump right in because I don't do long intros. I hate long intros. Yeah, I do have a kind of a long intro video, but I kind of like it. I'm proud of it. I worked on it myself. But beside the point, this is going to be an interesting film to discuss because honestly, this is very much a departure from what we discussed last night, and that, of course, being X-Men Apocalypse, which you can, of course, check out that review and give your thoughts in the comments on that one, as you will be able to once this one is finished. And for anyone that does catch us, if you're watching this on YouTube or Twitch or Twitter, thank you all for being here tonight. And if you do want to join us, I have dropped the link in the chat. So anybody that wants to pop in and give their thoughts on Logan, the door is there. It is open. By all means, come on in. The more the merrier, always. So, but this is as I said, this is a difficult movie to discuss. Not so much in that it's a bad movie. It is honestly, like I said, is within the top ranking of my favorites in the X-Men franchise. It is within my top 5. Honestly, it is a very heavy film. It is a far departure from some of the other entries in the X-Men franchise. And it is by no means a fun film. This is Logan's last ride. This is Logan's last go round. This is the end of Logan or James Howlett's life. If you noticed right here, I've used Logan's real name, his last name Howlett, as just a sort of homage. And I do want to say hello to the chat, everybody that's popping in here and everything this evening. George, it's good to see you, pal. Appreciate you being here tonight. So, and George says, Logan was the superhero I needed in my sophomore year of college. It was me and Mam Ambassador went and saw this when it came out, and this for her was like her only second or her third venture into the X-Men universe, and this was different from some of the other films we had seen. The first one, of course, that we saw was Days of Future Past, which we did a review for back last year. And Logan is a heavier film, and it's meant to be because this is Logan at the end of the road for him. And this is also the end of the road for Professor Xavier, for Charles Xavier. I mean, in a lot of ways, this is the swan song. This is the big crescendo for the journey for these two characters, for Charles Xavier and for Logan. But this also does carry through from the Wolverine, also that was also directed by James Mangold prior to this. And this is actually one of my 3 all-time favorite movies by a director. I mean, named James Mangold when he did Walk the Line and when he did the Wolverine, when he did this, I was like, okay, I like James Mangold as a director. He is a really, really solid director, and I have a lot of respect for him. So, and for some reason, my screen is green, and I have no idea why. Okay. All right. And of course, as I mentioned, the link is in the chat for anybody that wants to join me tonight. And of course, we've got a regular here on the Ambassadorial Wing, jack of all trades and a master of many. You know him, you love him. I call him my friend because, well, he is that. Mr. Zach Leary. Good evening, Zach.
Hey, good to be back, man.
Good to have you back, my friend. Always. So, I don't know how much of you, how much you heard of me opening up the stream and everything, but your initial thoughts on the Logan? What were you? What'd you
Yeah,
think?
for me, it's the one Marvel movie that really is kind of right up my alley in terms of my taste. It's like
Mm-hmm.
exactly my kind of movie. Not to say I don't like the other ones. I get something out of even like the bad ones to a certain extent. But
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Logan is the first of these, the X-Men and the other Marvel films that is like designed for a guy like me, you know. So I love it, man. It's got that
Mm-hmm.
darkness
Yeah.
to it. It's dark and gritty. It's you're watching, and I love this about stories like this. You're watching a hero who is struggling, right? That's one of the reasons I love
Yeah.
the Dark Knight Returns. You're watching Batman as an older guy, and for the first time,
Yeah.
we're watching Wolverine as an underdog type of character in a really
Yes.
real way. He can no longer rely on his physicality as he once did. So in a lot of ways, he's more vulnerable than ever. And you could even say that mentally.
Yeah. The thing I was even after I watched this today, I actually watched the making of as well, and something that both Hugh Jackman and James Mangold and a lot of the other people that worked on this film said, if Jackman was going to come back, he wanted a different story, and he really wanted to dig deeper into the character of Logan than they've even gone further before than they have gone further before then now. And what we see, and you hit it right on the head, was this is Logan very vulnerable both physically and emotionally and mentally. And he's still got that gruff demeanor, but he's caring for the closest person that he could call a father figure, and that's of course
Yeah.
Charles Xavier.
Mm-hmm.
And even Xavier is kind of he's at the end of his journey as well. And it's sad to see this because these are two characters that we have come to know and love and can have grown an emotional attachment to, and to see them in this state is a difficult thing. There's this movie has a very prominent Western vibe, and when I say Western, I mean like an old Western movie. And the one movie that I can really compare this to, Grant, I've only watched it once or twice because it is a difficult movie for me to watch because it contains or it stars one of the true icons of the silver screen from yesteryear, is John Wayne. And of course, the movie is The Shootist, which was actually John Wayne's last film before he died due to from cancer. And I kind of put Logan and The Shootist side by side because even though like the actor Hugh Jackman, he's still young, he's still healthy and everything. He doesn't have any health issues as far as we know. But the character of Logan that he has portrayed for so many years, this is like watching this movie is almost like a wake in a manner of speaking.
It
It's watching
is.
this movie is like watching two of our favorite characters, and honestly one of our favorite characters, approaching the grave. And the same is true with The Shootist and everything. And in the end, John Wayne's character does die, and then just a few months or so later, after The Shootist was released, John Wayne died. And for the people of the time, granted, I was just like a year or so old, or just a few months old when that movie was released. I didn't watch it until many years later when I was old enough to watch it. It really hit me on an emotional chord, and the same is true here with Logan. This is a character that I have read in the comics before they even considered doing these live action movies. I watched him in the animated series. So this is a character that I've had a lot of time with, a lot of time I've spent with him in various mediums. And to see him in a very vulnerable state is difficult because it's almost like you're watching a relative who is succumbing to a disease or to old age, and you don't want them to go, but you know almost in a way that death will bring them some measure of peace.
Yeah, well, I you could describe the film also as an epilogue, and I don't know if it's really a sunset on Wolverine and Professor X as much as it is a sunset on Hugh Jackman and Patrick Stewart's involvement in the series. It
Hmm.
was meant to be their final outing as
Hmm.
their characters. We obviously we know Hugh Jackman's coming back, but to me, this was a perfect send off for them, and
Yeah. Well, and
just a beautifully done film. Well, let me throw this out there as well.
go ahead,
Is
please
to
go ahead,
me
Zach.
the stakes are a little bit more enhanced for me in this movie because we talked about Apocalypse, which is a fun B giant, multi-million dollar budget B movie,
Mhm.
comic fun popcorn
Yeah.
flick. Everybody loves
Yes.
that. But
Yes.
Logan, on the other hand, the stakes are so personal. He's got this new little girl he's looking after,
Mhm.
and there's something about that that's a little bit more closer to home. We're not talking huge stakes. I mean, this little girl dies. Is it going
Mhm.
to change the world? No, but
Mhm.
he's making this stand, and really a film about sacrifice. And what
Yes.
he's doing is he's putting himself in harm's way on the line for somebody he really doesn't even know. So
Yeah.
there's something to be said about Wolverine's humanity in this movie too. And there's some great lines about that and how he's like he doesn't want to really accept that role. He's like somebody will come along. X says somebody has come along, talking about Logan. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
a beautiful movie, man, and it's got this nice little kind of um, refined storyline.
Very much so. And it is honestly for me, like I said, it is within my top 3 or 4 of within the franchise. And just amongst the standalones, it is at the top of the standalone films and everything, kind of, with the Wolverine, with Logan, with the Deadpool films, even with New Mutants. Those are all what I would consider the standalone films within the franchise. And the one thing that I really love about this film, it starts on a very hard, gritty edge and everything. And when they released the rating for this, and it was an R rating. I was like, okay, this is not gonna be a film that you can take a 9 or 10-year-old to go see. This is a film that's gonna be for adults. And I honestly thought that was a great move, especially for those that had grown up with this franchise and had grown up with this character. And speaking of people who have grown up watching these films, reading these comics, I do want to give a warm welcome to another visitor, another fellow ambassador, um, my friend, your friend, the George.
What
Aiden
up?
and George. Aiden and
Hey,
Hey
George.
guys. Hey Zach. Hey Ambassador.
Hey, bud. So we're talking Logan. So I saw your comment and everything. So your thoughts on the film? Anything that we haven't brought up so far? Anything that we may have that we've hit upon um, up to this point?
Yeah, I remember this film came out my sophomore year of college, and I didn't know what to expect because it felt like like the MCU was kind of dominating anything Marvel,
Hmm.
and I remember like it was like the first comic book movie that came out the year 2017 where you had like a lot of comic book movies come out.
Hmm.
So, but it was like also very different from what we were getting from like Marvel and even from the previous X-Men movies. Like that first trailer like that set the tone like right away, and I was like, this really feels different, especially from the Wolverine. Which, while I enjoy
Mhm.
the Wolverine, it felt like your standard like superhero solo film that did go on that PG-13 rated R border, but
Mhm.
never got to rated R, and it felt like I felt like when Deadpool came out the year before, I felt like Deadpool made it okay for this film to be rated R, which is weird when you consider how different the tones are. And I feel like we should thank Deadpool for this movie being rated R.
I would say, at least in part, yes, I would agree with that assessment. In terms of, now here's the thing: Deadpool wasn't the very first rated R superhero movie. There have been
Oh,
other movies
I know
before
that,
that.
but
There
it
were
was
other
the first
films. Mhm.
successful one. Like it made a lot of money and it was
Yeah.
well received. So I think it basically told everyone that you can have a successful R-rated film because other previous R-rated films weren't as successful as Deadpool was.
Granted, but at the same time, I think it was the right property at the right time, and it hit at the right time, and it had the right casting, particularly with Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool. And he wasn't afraid to necessarily go really hard R rated or anything with the character, considering the character that he was portraying. Because Deadpool within the Marvel universe, he is more of a he's I think Zach and George, you would both agree with this. He's more of an anti-hero than he is a pure hero.
Yeah.
He's a hero
Oh
that
yeah.
isn't afraid to kill or isn't worried about the morality of killing, particularly when it's somebody that pisses him the hell off. But I think the reason why
I'm not
Logan
sure I'd
needed
agree with that, but go ahead.
okay, fair enough. But the difference is with Logan, it isn't R rated just because of the violence or even the cussing, but because of the subject matter that it contains. And that's what I think a lot of people gravitated towards with this. Yes, it does take place in a fictitious universe. It takes place in the Marvel universe within the X-Men expanse of the Marvel universe. But this deals with more real life issues than any of the other previous X-Men movies have up until now. Now the Wolverine does hit on some real life issues and everything, but with Logan and everything, and they did bring this up in the making of, it deals with having to care for an elderly parent, which I'm a person who does have to and anything deal with that. Now, granted, my mother doesn't suffer from any type of degenerative brain issues like Xavier does, but still, she is growing older. She is getting old, and yes, her health at times does take a hit. So on that particular, and I'm on that particular spectrum, I could relate to Logan. I imagine a lot of other people could as well. Excuse me. And of course, you've got the very difficult and strained relationship between Logan and Laura, because here is a young woman or a young child who's looking for a father figure and she has it. Yet Logan realizes that he is deficient as a parent. He's not the fatherly kind. He doesn't know how to care for another human being aside from taking care of himself. And that's something that in some instances people do deal with. I mean, to say this briefly, and then Zach and George, I'll let you give your takes on this. My biological parents weren't built out to be parents. Not to say this to be demeaning of myself. I was a mistake. I wasn't meant to ever be. I wasn't ever meant to come into the world. But they had the good sense to give me to people who could love me and care for me and raise me and give me a good life. Logan doesn't have that skill set at all. All he's ever known is pain and blood and violence. So, but anyway, Zach, George, your thoughts?
It definitely like when it comes to the taking care of thing, it reminded me of like almost 2 years before Logan came out when my grandma's health was deteriorating, and we kind of moved into that house after I graduated high school. So like, just like, trying to take care of her like before like she eventually passed away a few months later. Like it definitely has like that vibe. And obviously if you don't know Logan by now, like he's obviously not like the best suited when it comes to taking care of stuff. Like remember in X-Men Days of Futures Past, like when like Professor X asked him to like do the same thing like I did for you, like you obviously knew Logan was gonna struggle with that because he's not Professor X, he's Logan.
Yeah, I like the comparison of this movie to a Western. Um, and this kind of is interesting too. Let me know how you guys feel about that, about this, that this movie kind of comes along with the reinvigoration of the American Western. I mean, that was a genre that was essentially dead until the early 2010s, where you started to see like 310 to Yuma and, Django Unchained and, uh, Hell or High Water. I think that resurgence has kind of passed, but this movie was right in line where the public was kind of into that and was curious about that kind of aesthetic.
Yeah, I would most definitely agree because that was James Mangold's and the other writers and even Hugh Jackman's intention with this film. A comment that a comment that Mangold made was this movie is not a full blown homage, but it is a kind of an homage to Unforgiven. Granted, a film
Mm.
I've never watched, and I
Oh,
definitely need to. I've heard it's an outstanding film, and I will eventually get around to watching it. I'll probably do a review of it. But definitely the 90s was also, you saw a brief resurgence of the western. I mean, you had, like you said, Unforgiven. You had, of course, Tombstone, one of my all-time favorite movies. Love that film to death. One of the most quotable movies in the history of cinema, honestly. I mean, you had The Quick and the Dead, and I mean, there were others. I'm probably just not recalling them off the top of my head, but I honestly, yeah, I wholeheartedly agree that Ambassador minus 10 points. Okay. I don't know what the 10 points are for, but okay, probably because I've never seen Unforgiven. For never watching Unforgiven. Okay. So, um, but yeah, honestly, yeah, I mean, the Western vibe, the Western aesthetic in this film is very prevalent. Granted, you don't have Wolverine wearing a cowboy hat. You definitely don't have Xavier wearing a cowboy hat. But
you're out in the
just this,
desert. It's got the
yeah,
look, it's got the vibe. You've got Wolverine taking on that that classic man in black strolls into town. Kind of, he's a dangerous guy.
mhm.
He's kind of a loose cannon in some ways. Even watching him beat up those guys at the beginning of the film is totally a Western, a Western construct.
Yeah, most definitely. So, George, your thoughts?
Yeah, it definitely has like a western vibe. And yeah, I remember like the revival of the westerns in the early 2010s. Not just like films like Django Unchained, but I remember like True Grit and like a few others. And with Logan, like it was definitely different from like the other X-Men movies, not just because it was rated R, but because of that western feel. And like it's weird. Like I usually don't watch like I don't watch westerns in like theaters, but it kind of felt good to watch like a western vibe film in the theater for the first time, especially because like it felt like the western revival has kind of died out since Logan.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, it totally has.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, and let me know if you guys agree. I think it died again with the fucking Hateful Eight, which was
Yeah,
this boring, meandering, good, but just dry and meandering 4 hour chore of a film. It kind of, I think that to put it back in the ground for a couple years at least.
yeah, and I love the Hateful Eight. I've only watched it like a couple of times, but I absolutely love that film. When I heard that Quentin Tarantino was doing a Western, I was like, holy freaking crap, yes. But the problem was I never got a chance to see it in theaters. Now I have seen it on cable, and I'm sure it's been heavily edited, obviously, because it is a Quentin Tarantino movie. But I absolutely, positively,
Yeah, it's
I
good,
love
but
Hateful
it's
Eight.
too long. So Tarantino said his original Django, he had like
Mhm.
5 hours of footage. It's like,
Don't doubt it.
yeah, and the Hateful Eight on Netflix, which is probably the best way to watch it now, is a 4 hour miniseries from
Hmm.
the film. And the film was so long when it was in theaters that there had to be a intermission. That's like the first time since since the old days where they put an intermission, a 30-minute intermission into uh, the program.
Yeah. So, and I do want to bring up Ferris and hello, Ferris. Good to see you again, buddy. As always, I do want to bring up this comment here. Does anyone agree that with me that the villain's motivation kind of gives the metaphor of the current president at the time? Yeah.
Well,
Um,
what does that mean?
I think the fact that I think what Ferris is alluding to is the fact that the president is trying to kind of control and manipulate anything and everything. Okay, let's see. This movie came out in 2017. I don't think the villain is anything like Trump,
I think
but
he's saying Biden.
yeah, I think Ferris is alluding to Biden, a little more cognitively clear Biden, maybe. Yes, but not the not the Biden that's in the White House.
Well,
But we're not
Joe is a creepy guy, but I don't think he's really a mastermind person.
not even close. But that's as far as we'll go with political commentary on here
Yeah,
this
okay.
evening. Um, but speaking of,
I could really surgically take him apart if you ever need me to do that.
oh, I know you already have. I watched your video.
Yeah, if you ever need me, you know where to find me.
Yes, I do. And that the interesting thing is about this movie, the villains are, I don't want to say underwhelming, but they're very low
A little
key.
bit, yeah.
But
Yeah.
honestly, I think that's a credit to the film because you don't need a big bombastic villain for a movie like this. I mean, you've got Boyd Holbrook as Pierce and everything, and unless I'm mistaken, I think Boyd Holbrook is a relation to the late actor Hal Holbrook.
Who was an awesome character
Yeah,
actor.
great actor, great.
Um,
Two of my
well, Boyd Holbrook is a really good actor, and I'm not sure if
Mhm.
he was underutilized. I think they didn't want a big villain, and this
Mm,
is one of the few cases I think this is warranted to take away from the spotlight of the main characters.
yes,
Um, so have that threat, but the threat it's more of a character study than it is a conflict film. But you have to
yes.
have that conflict in there. So it's
Mhm.
like if you have this awesome Anton Chigurh, type amazing villain, maybe it takes away a little bit from the title character.
Yes. And I have to agree with that. Then, of course, you've got Richard E. Grant as Xander Rice or Dr. Rice.
Oh
And
God,
he's so, I cannot remember another. I know I've seen another movie with Richard E. Grant in it, but I can't remember any
Rise of
of them.
Skywalker.
Oh my God. Why was he so good in this and so horrendous in the other? Yeah,
He
he played
wasn't that bad. General Pride.
Gerald Pride. Yeah, that's right. Grant, what were you thinking? You did
He
this
got himself in.
masterpiece, and you did this masterpiece, and then you went to that that radioactive dumpster fire that is the Rise of Skywalker.
So let me throw
Oh,
a quote at you. I'll tell you why he did it. So
sure.
Michael Caine did Jaws 4. Okay.
Yeah. Hmm.
And they asked him, so Michael, have you seen the film? He said, no, I haven't, but I've seen the beach house it paid for.
Yeah, I imagine Mr. Grant got a nice, decent paycheck for his part as General Pride in the Rise of Skywalker, but still,
So I have another thing I want to throw at you guys.
sure.
Is this comparable to the Joker movie? But I think these are the two main films that are character study films that are not this big, grandiose, you know, save the world type movie. So in some on paper, in some ways, it would sound less interesting than, you've got this maniacal bad guy. But I think they kind of work a little bit better. So character study films, this and Joker.
I would say yes. I think they are comparable, most definitely. Now, granted, with the Joker, you're dealing with a man who's clearly mentally imbalanced, like severely mentally imbalanced. And with Logan, obviously, we're dealing with a character that we have, in some instances, grown up watching anything either on the big screen or the small screen or on the printed page. So yeah, I would definitely compare the Joker and Logan. I would put them in that same category as a character study, most definitely. But just from different perspectives in terms of the makeup of the main character. So, George, your thoughts?
I would definitely say like like Logan and Joker played a role in these like big revivals of like successful like really good R-rated comic book movies, and
Hmm.
definitely like they are definitely like interesting character studies that are kind of in different styles. Like Logan's the conclusion of a universe, or at least a corner of the X-Men universe, because there were other X-Men movies that came out afterwards in Deadpool 2 and I hate to say it, but Dark Phoenix, even though I never watched it, but I heard it was a train wreck. And
Don't. Don't
obviously,
watch. Don't.
Joker's obviously in its own universe and is a different kind of take on Joker that we never seen before.
Mm.
So I would definitely say like while they're two different kind of films, I think the character studies like one being of like a man that society has like pushed around way too far and how he kind of stands up to it. And then you have Logan, where you see a man that's been through a lot for a long, long time and is kind of at the end of his rope.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they're both outlier people. Like they're both outsiders of
Yeah.
society.
Most definitely. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing that I think that we appreciate about a character like Logan. He is an outsider, but there is a lot that is relatable to him. Yes, he has this extraordinary ability to heal himself physically, but I think one of the really cool things about this is even though he can heal himself physically, his mental state has never been able to fully recover from all the trauma that he has experienced throughout his life. And I think you really see that physical exhaustion in Logan in this movie. And that's one of the really compelling parts of Hugh Jackman's performance. You know, one thing that they brought up is there are hints of the story Old Man Logan in this movie, but it is more comparable to, as I mentioned, as I said, Unforgiven. And I honestly, I really love the fact that we do see Logan as a man who has lived for almost or over 200 years, and he has lost so much. He has messed up so much. He himself is so broken, but yet he still has that thread of integrity and that thread of heroism within himself. That's the thing that draws us to him, even though he struggles. He still, in the end, does do the right thing. Yeah, and I'll bring up Ferris's comment here. The teaser for Logan always gave me the feeling that it's going to have a sad ending. Yeah, I had the same feeling, and well, and Ferris brings up a good point. This is actually a good segue. Not to mention they used the Johnny Cash song "Hurt." Yeah, I love. That's got to be one of my all-time favorite teaser trailers. The fact that they use, and not to mention that James Mangold did the biopic "Walk the Line." So that's already present in James Mangold's mind to use.
Yeah,
So
the greatest teaser trailer of all time. Yeah, I think, but
so
possibly. Yeah.
yeah. Well, you can't go wrong with Johnny Cash. Let's just be honest here. Even in his latter years, the man still did music, and it was music that was impactful and just hit you right deep into your bones. But moving into the movie itself, you've got Logan obviously taking care of Xavier. You've got this other character that we were introduced to in X Men Apocalypse, Caliban, who's helping also take care of Xavier. You've got Xavier who's dealing with his own struggles. Okay, George, you scared the crap out of me there, bud.
Sorry, yeah, sorry. No, my voice has just been a bit out of it this week. It's been a long week, like both on work and on YouTube.
I
So I
understand.
apologize. I'll mute
It's
myself
okay.
when I talk.
Okay, you're fine, bud. Anyway, you've got Laura's storyline in this film, and you've got you've got the main story arc, and that's of course Logan's own struggles and trying to just make it through day to day. I mean,
Yeah.
that's not an easy thing. Something else we can all relate to. So, Zach, George, any of those plot points you want to hit upon or anything? Floor is yours,
Well,
buds.
what comes to mind is the fact that Xavier accidentally committed an insane, multi-murder atrocity by accident.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um, so you've given him a real chunk of darkness, and I think those are his last words. Like, I remember what I did, wherever that was. Where was that? Somewhere in Europe.
No, it was at the mansion at the school in Westchester.
Oh, okay.
No,
Off me.
they were at the school in West. They were at the school in Westchester. They even mention it in a radio broadcast after what happens at the casino and everything. And that's the great thing is we never see a flashback of what happened at the school at the Xavier's mansion. We don't see those X-Men die. We don't see all the people that were injured or killed in that episode or anything where Xavier is starting to lose control of his faculties, lose control of his powers. But we do get a hint of what happened in that section, in that particular event when they're at the casino. And Logan's gotten back, and he realizes that Xavier hasn't been taking his meds, and he's like, "Oh shit!" And he races back, and everybody's already frozen and seizing, and it's just absolutely horrendous. But then you see the agents there have come after Xavier and Laura, and you have that very intense slow motion scene where Logan is just offing these guys one after another. But even for him, it's a struggle because he's having difficulty moving due to Xavier's ability. And I think it's the Alzheimer's or the wherever the brain degeneration disease that he's suffering from causes his ability to freeze people to go haywire. And it's a very difficult thing. And the one thing that I found really interesting was in those two particular scenes when they're at the smelting plant out in the desert, and then when they're at the casino. Mangold mentioned this that they deliberately shook the camera as violently as they could, but then they went in and they used this stabilizing software on the editing software to stabilize the shaking, but still leave that smearing and that distortion. And I really thought that was a clever thing because they used something as simple as a rope to shake the camera and everything to get that effect. But it's a hard thing to see someone that you've grown emotionally attached to, even if it's just a character, see them suffer that way, the way that Xavier is suffering. So, but Zach, George, your thoughts?
especially like after we've seen these characters have been around since like 2000, well, at least these versions of these characters, and it's like to see like these characters like suffer like aging
Mm-hmm.
so very different from what we've been used to. And I mean, yeah, I know like what happened to like Xavier in Last Stand, but it's like here, like you really see him like suffering, like aging, because like very vulnerable. And same thing with like Wolverine, like you're seeing like his healing is not working as well as it once did, and it's not because of like any poison or anything. Like you're seeing like him like aging as well.
Yeah, and that's very true. And I've got Ferris's comment up here. I wish we could have gotten a flashback at the mansion where we see the entire X Men before they were killed by Xavier's psychic seizure. It was even in the original script. It would be a set for yeah. So, well, Zach, I know you've got to go here in a few minutes, so I'm gonna let you have the floor and everything, so you can get your points out before you have to bounce or anything. So, um, floor is yours, my friend.
Well, we can just keep going. I don't know if I have any closing thoughts. That comment is interesting, though.
Mm-hmm.
Could you bring that back up? Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
So who was supposed to be killed in that?
Well, it would have been the main team and any other students that would have been at the university at that time, or not. Well, the school. I just call it the university because it makes the most sense. So it would have
Are we
been
talking about characters we know or new students?
Probably the characters we knew, and then probably students that were there at the time, more than likely. So we're talking probably Cyclops, Jean Grey, Storm, most likely Beast, perhaps Nightcrawler,
Yeah,
Iceman.
horrible idea. Fucking horrible idea. If you've got to kill new characters. I think to kill any legacy characters in a scene like that would be a huge mistake.
Yeah. Well, and I think that was a smart move by Mangold and the other people that were working on the script and on the story to leave it ambiguous, because you don't, as you said, it's tricky killing off legacy characters. Look at The Last Stand. They killed off 3 for Pete's sake. I mean, they killed off Xavier, Cyclops, and Jean Grey, and you saw how much of a backlash that movie got. Not to mention the story itself was all over the place and just in general a mess. I think keeping this movie focused on just Logan and Xavier and Laura was the smartest move. George, you were saying?
Oh no, I wasn't saying anything. Sorry, I apologize.
Okay.
Yeah, I was responding to something in my work chat at work. Okay. Like I said, it's been a long day, and I know some of my coworkers are voicing out their frustrations.
Okay.
What are they saying?
Oh no, it was like we work in an after school, and like today, like it was just very eventful. Like one kid just like screaming like in the halls, like bloody murder.
Oh God.
And like I guess like one kid like flipped the desk over.
Jesus.
Okay. Sounds like Laura. It sounds like Laura from Logan.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I mean. It's like it feels like something that would happen at Charles School or like X-23.
Oh, and speaking of Laura, X-23, portrayed by Daphne Keene, Zach, George, let me get your thoughts on her performance and on the character and her journey. What'd y'all think of that?
She had a pretty expressive face. I thought she did a lot of nonverbal acting, which to me is pretty impressive. I mean, she was a little girl at the time. Yeah,
11
she did
years
a good
old.
job. Yeah.
So, George, your thoughts?
Yeah, I thought she did very good with the role that she was given, and I think one of the downsides, like when it comes to like how things kind of ended with like this like Fox universe, was we never really got to see any more of her, because like there were hints that maybe they can do more with this character, but
yeah,
like, obviously that doesn't look like it's in the cards. But the actress, what's her name again? You said it
Daphne
before.
Keene.
Daphne Keene, like she's very good, and I'm glad that like she's got more projects like since like her performance is X-23. Like I think she's gonna be like one of the upcoming Star Wars stuff.
Yeah, she's supposed to be in the Acolyte, if I remember correctly.
Is that the one John Watts is working on?
Might be. I don't remember exactly who's working on the Acolyte, but I know she's on the cast for it. So
yeah, I didn't
need to. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I thought that was the one John Watts was working on, because I know he was given something that's was kind of part of the reason why he left Fantastic Four, because like he was working on other stuff.
Yeah. Well, for myself, it's always tricky casting a child actor in a movie like this,
Mm-hmm.
particularly a superhero movie, and a movie that's very different from any other superhero movie we have seen before, particularly in this universe. And it's I think she did. I mean, everybody was singing her praises, which child actors, and Zach, you've talked about this yourself, or we've talked about this both on and off air. Child actors can oftentimes be hit or miss.
Yep.
They can either really hit it out of the park, or other times it can be an absolute dud.
Well, it's make or break. A child
Yeah.
actor can make or break a project.
Yeah.
I mean, take The Stand. If you have one bad actor, you're fucked. Not The Stand. What is that movie?
It.
No. Well, something like that. But what's that old school
Zach,
one with River
Zach,
Phoenix?
Stand By Me.
Yeah, like let's say you have one weak performance, it totally weakens the film. Stranger Things, yeah, the child actors, man, hit or miss, but if you hire the right people, I mean, it can really turn into something amazing.
And I will definitely say Daphne Keene's performance as Laura, and I'll just call her for what she is, Laura Howlett, Logan's daughter. She did I don't like to use a lot of hyperbole. You all know this, but I think she did, honestly, especially for a child actor working beside two actors who have extensive, and I mean extensive, credentials both on the on screen and on stage. And one of the things that she shared in her interview for the making of Logan, Patrick Stewart told her, do as much stage work as you can, because you will have those scenes that are so good that you'll want to do them over again. But with film, it's not the same way unless you do a take, multiple takes. But she really, really, I think, honestly, she really was the third pillar of this film. I mean, you had Logan, you had Xavier, you had her. And if she didn't land, if she didn't work as that character, then yeah, this movie would have probably been a dud, even as good as Xavier or as good as Jackman and
Yeah,
Stewart
well,
were.
let's say we have a killer young child Anakin, that would have changed the whole movie.
I've often said this. I even said this at the time. Back when I was going through my little bit of a phase when I wasn't a real big fan of the prequels, but I fell back in love with them. Jake Lloyd was not an awful actor. Was he the right, perhaps the right pick for the role of a young Anakin Skywalker?
No,
it's hard for me to say this, but no, he wasn't.
No, he
Now,
wasn't.
I made this assertion that me and Mammoth Master and some of my friends who are all Star Wars fans have talked about this. There was a child actor around about the same time as Jake Lloyd was that I thought would have actually might have been a better pick for young Anakin for the Phantom Menace. And that was the child actor Freddie Both from The Mummy Returns, who played Rick and Evie's son. I think
Well,
he would have been, but that's
anybody would
just
have been
my
better.
granted.
Anybody. Yeah, anybody.
Yeah.
That was a wrong casting choice. But so I
Yeah.
want to throw this out there too, is I feel like this movie is the first time
Sure.
Hugh Jackman really got to act some of these amazing scenes as Wolverine. I mean, you gave him so many great opportunities in the script in this movie in a way, way more concrete way than any of the previous films. Hugh Jackman is a fucking amazing actor, but he usually is not given that opportunity. So for your viewers, go and check out the movie Prisoners, which is a Denis Villeneuve film. Everybody loves him now, but back
Yes.
then movie came out, it was like 2013, 14. Nobody knew who he was, but you've got
That put him on
Jackman.
the map before like Arrival and Sicario did.
Yeah, have you seen Prisoners?
No, I gotta see it. It's like I finally watched Blade Runner 2049 for the first time.
That's a good one.
Yeah,
Oh,
like that,
man.
that was an awesome one. Yeah, I've seen Sicario, I've seen Arrival a
That's
few
good
times,
too.
I've seen Dune, I even saw Enemy. Prisoner, I have it on DVD. I just gotta like find the time.
Oh, Enemy. Yeah, I tried watching it, and I saw the scene with the spider. I'm like, oh god, and I
Yeah,
had to
that's
shut it
yeah,
off.
like that kind of freaked me out. Like, as well.
I was
Even
like, what?
I got arachnophobia. It's funny. I love
Where's this
Spider-Man,
going?
but spiders.
Well, and you bring up Denis Villeneuve.
Well, but let me
As long as
let me just finish that though.
sure,
Is
yeah, sure,
that's
go ahead. Yeah, go
the
ahead.
my favorite Hugh Jackman performance because he's given these awesome monologues.
Yeah. Well, that's what any actor hopes for, is to have a great monologue, honestly. And you know, Logan has so many great moments in this movie. I mean, you could point to the two fight scenes or the three fight scenes, the one at the beginning, the one at the abandoned smelting plant, and
Well,
then the
I
one at
don't
the
count
end.
those.
But
But I'm
yeah,
talking more like dialogue
the
scenes.
dialogue. Yeah, and that's what that was the other point I was going to come across. I
Okay,
think
my bad.
honestly, no, it's okay. The dialogue and the delivery for those scenes, particularly when it's Logan and Xavier sparring verbally with one another. And there's Xavier has one really great, there's several great lines that Xavier has in this movie, but one of my favorites is when he's really just beating down emotionally on Logan. He looks at him and they're in that abandoned water tower. And Xavier says to him, "You are such a disappointment."
Yeah.
And Logan looks back at him, and there's a similar scene later on where they're at the farmhouse with that family that unfortunately ends up getting killed by the X-24, the younger version, the brutal version of Logan. When Xavier says to him, "You should take a moment and live in this particular moment, because this is what life is supposed to be like."
Well, I think he says something like, "This is the first time I've been happy in a while," something like that.
Yeah, he
What does he
says
say?
he says, "This is the first time in a long time that I've had a good day."
Yeah, yeah,
Because they get the nice thing is they do give you a bit of a time frame. They mentioned that it was a year prior to this movie when Xavier had his seizure and killed all the students and all the other X-Men at the mansion, and that's when Logan took him and ran. And they went to the Southwest. They went to I think it's Arizona or Texas, somewhere along there. They're actually on the opposite side of the border in Mexico.
mhm.
I think is where they're at. They're in they don't say specifically where in Mexico, but they're in Mexico. They're on the opposite side of the U.S. and Mexican
Well,
border.
they gave him an interesting opportunity as an actor too, to take a character who was always in control. All of a sudden,
Mhm.
he's not. So they gave him an interesting character choice in this movie too. But I want to throw this out before I go.
Sure.
Have either of you met a real albino person in real life?
No, I never did.
I can honestly say I haven't. No. Mm-mm.
I think I have, but I don't think real albinos look the way that one dude did.
Oh, you talking about Caliban?
Yeah, I think real albinos, at least the person I'm thinking of, just looked like a vampire. You know what I
Yeah, it
mean?
definitely did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Well, if you're
I met a real albino with blonde hair and the whole thing. The
mm-hmm,
palest person I've ever seen.
mm-hmm.
Um, but man, that fucking Callahan guy creeped me out. I was hoping he would get killed, even though he was not particularly, a bad guy, just because he was so creepy, man.
Well, he ends up sacrificing himself to take out um, At least a few of the Reavers and everything, the guys have
He
got
was
the.
creepy though. Did
He
he creep
was,
you
yeah.
out?
Honestly, no, he didn't. He creeped me out more so in X-Men Apocalypse, but that was just because of his appearance. By the time I saw him in Logan, his appearance didn't bother me. Even his mannerisms and how he behaved didn't even bother me. Um,
I'd have helped him out, dude. I'd have got him some fucking, some clothes, give him some makeup, a wig, help him out a little bit.
yeah. So, but yeah, honestly, for the few scenes, and here's the funny thing: the actor who played Caliban, Stephen Merchant is the actor's name. He's actually 7 foot tall, and the transformation that he underwent to play Caliban was impressive. I mean, really, really impressive. I mean, he obviously had contacts, he had the bald cap, but he had that extensive um, body makeup and everything to make him look as pale as he did, to give him that look of a albino. And I think the scene as well where they actually were the Reavers um, pulled or exposed him to sunlight, and that particular makeup effect was actually really good as well. So, and that's one of the really cool things about this film is it has a lot of makeup effects, but at the same time they're all realistic. In a manner of speaking, it's a lot of stab wounds and puncture points and bullet wounds and all that sort of thing. But they really did a good job at making all this look realistic. It wasn't overly gruesome per se, except for some of the slash claw marks and everything when Wolverine's going after people, or Laura, or even the bad Logan, as they refer to him as in the film.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna head out, man. But I
Zach,
appreciate you having me on.
Zach, always good to have you, buddy. Hope you have a good night, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, take care, Zach.
All right, take care, guys.
All right, have a good one. So, and guys and gals, make sure you go check out Zach Leary's channel. He's got several. There's the Mind of Zach Leary. He just recently, today uploaded a brand new video onto his channel. He's also got Top Shelf TV, which I've made many appearances on as well. Go check that out if you haven't, and make sure you hit that subscribe button. And then, of course, there his political channel called The Last Outlaws. Another top-notch channel. Zach doesn't really do live streams. He does that over here on my channel, over here on this side of the side of YouTube, which I love having him. And I recommend, for those of you that are watching this live or catch us on the replay, Zach is a great host when he records videos, and he's also a great panelist. So I highly encourage you, if you can get him on, if you can get a hold of him on social media. He is on primarily on Twitter. So um, you ever need him for a project and it's something that is really within his wheelhouse, reach out to him. And not only that, he is a good friend. So, not that I'm not saying anything ill towards you, George. You are as well a good friend. So, but George, let me ask you, how do you feel about having a more heavier weighted story like this within the comic book movie genre, the superhero movie genre, anything? Because this isn't the atypical superhero film by any stretch. So, do you think they should do more films like this, or do you think it should be more um, curated and everything to a character or to a particular story?
Oh, I love Logan. I didn't get a chance to say this, but to me, this is probably one of my top 5 favorite comic book movies in general. Like, it's not my favorite of like the X Men movies. It's one of my favorites, and I feel like stories like this will actually help the genre more. I think because as much as I love like the MCU movies, I feel like you need to always something different to like keep the brand fresh, like the
Mhm.
superhero genre fresh. I'm not even just talking about the MCU. I'm just talking about the superhero movie genre because it doesn't have to be like the MCU where you see formulaic stuff. You can see it, you know, with DC movies, or you can see it even with like certain X-Men movies that they can sometimes get a bit formulaic. So to me, like stories like this that really tug at the heart, that I'm not even saying like are grounded, but like movies that like can be also a character study and like showing like the end of an era. I feel like this was like one of those few that actually pulled it off. Like
Yeah, I am. Go ahead. Go ahead,
like
George.
the thing I want to bring up about the Wolverine trilogy, to me this feels like one of, if not maybe the only trilogy where you felt like it started off rough but ended on probably the highest note that any series could end on. And I know James Mangold didn't direct X-Men Origins Wolverine, he directed the Wolverine and Logan,
Mm-hmm.
but the fact that they were able to like pull it together after X-Men Origins Wolverine, because I do think the Wolverine's a very good movie, but the
Mm-hmm.
fact that they were able to climb after that major setback really speaks volumes that they wanted to get this character right in a solo setting.
Yeah,
Because
I. Go ahead, George. It's all right. Go ahead.
because the Wolverine, while the Wolverine, as much as I enjoy it, it does kind of feel formulaic at times. So like you went from having one of the worst movies ever to having a good but formulaic, you feel like you kind of seen it before movie, to something that was unique and heartfelt.
I never really saw the Wolverine as formulaic to any extent. I think that the Wolverine and Logan pair together very well. And, even what Yuriko says to Logan, I see you dying with your heart in your hand. Laura is his heart. Laura is the one thing that he's willing to lay his life down for, except for maybe Jean. Laura is the first person in maybe decades or even a century that he was willing to lay his life down for and sacrifice his life for. And I do not know why my screen keeps going green. It's really starting to cheese me off. And yet, when I'm live over here on YouTube, everything's fine. Oh well. Anyway, but honestly, it's as bad as Origins was. Logan, as you said, really stuck the landing in a big way.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
yeah. With Origins, it's so weird. Like I never saw Origins in theaters. I saw the Wolverine and Logan both in theaters, under two different kind of circumstances. The Wolverine I saw with my cousin and his eventual wife. It was like the day like after I saw my sister, like before she went to teaching Korea for a few years.
Hmm.
And then I saw Logan at like an interesting time for me in college. It was like kind of
Hmm.
like my bounce back semester after the previous semester I didn't do so well in. So it was like I was spending a lot of time like catching up, and like there were only like few days I really felt like I had free time. And it was like that
Hmm.
weekend Logan came out that I was able to make some free time and not stress about school for once.
I get that. Believe me, I get that better than you probably realize, George. And I do want to bring up Ferris's comment here real quick. The one time that Patrick Stewart made me cry is when he said that he had the best moment after the dinner scene and remembers what happened at the mansion. That really hit me at an emotional level. And that hit everybody. But here's the twist about that scene. We think he's talking to Logan. It is Logan, but it's the berserker Logan. It's the completely emotionally devoid Logan. And when you see him turn and you see him realize it isn't Logan, and
That
then you
hurt.
see and then you see the altered Logan stab him right in the heart, and it just, you're like, oh my gosh, that is such a gut punch. I mean, that's an absolute unadulterated gut punch. And then you see, at least off screen, you see the alter Logan kill the family. or has killed the
I
family.
felt bad for that family. Like that was like
Yeah,
one of them. Like that was like a family that was just like helping them, and then like in response they get like killed.
yeah. One, it kind of reinforces, but I think unduly, Logan's assessment. Every time I try to help somebody, somebody gets hurt in the process, and that's the real gut punch of it. And it's it's a difficult thing and everything to see a completely innocent family be taken out like that. All right, I'm just gonna turn the camera off. And it's it makes you just the thing that James Mangold said, and I think there's a lot of truth in it. He wanted this movie to feel heavy. I'm kind of paraphrasing in a lot of ways. This was, as I mentioned at the start of the stream, this is almost like a wake where we're starting to mourn, and we realize that by the end of this movie, that Logan and Xavier and possibly even Laura are all going to be dead. Now, obviously, thankfully, Laura doesn't die anything, but she ends up burying her father, and even in a way, Logan does bury a parent in the person of Xavier, a man who's been such a large part of his life, and who, as Xavier said to him, I gave you a family, I gave you a purpose, I gave you a home, and you're doing this to me just to wait for me to die. Because even when Logan's talking about, well, we're going to get this boat, we're just going to go off and live on the sea, Xavier knows what his intention is. It's for them to die on that boat. They'll be out in the middle of the ocean where Xavier's powers, if they go haywire again, won't hurt anybody. And you know, Xavier is he's not a young man. Obviously, we meet him when he's not a young man, but granted, he's younger than he is now. He says, "I'm 90 years old." He's like, "You're a wreck. You're a mess." And yes, Xavier does say these things from a place of pain because he himself is in pain too. You know, for any of us who has to deal with aging parents, like myself, I realize there may come a time when I'm going to have to make some difficult decisions. Anything in regards to my mother's health and what she may or may not want. And Logan's trying to do the same thing here in this movie. And the decision kind of gets made for him. That's the really hard thing about all this.
Yeah, and it reminds me of like that time like after like I moved like to where I am now, which is like obviously like my grandma's old house that I've been living in for like almost 7 years. But like at that time, like we had to make
Mhm.
that like tough decision with her health because
Excuse me.
she obviously wasn't taking care of herself. And yeah, well, may have she might have felt betrayed we were making these decisions for her, but it's like what she was doing wasn't all that much better either. So it's like it's a movie that like even though it's fictional, I feel like it connects in some ways, like at any point or any situation, because
Well,
it's
and
not just about taking care of people, but also that fact when you feel like you're at the end of something, because like you see those scenes where like Logan, he's like in pain, like his healing's not working as well, like the times are changing, all of his friends are dead.
yeah, and the only person he's got left from his old life as an X-Man is Xavier. And even Xavier, the first time we see Xavier in this movie, he's rambling like a madman, rolling around in an old decrepit um, motorized wheelchair. and Xavier's trying to give, or Logan's trying to give him these medications to keep him lucid, or even just allow him to have some measure of peace mentally. And Xavier's fighting him on it. He's like, I don't want it. I don't want this. And then he does say, as Logan leaves the water tower, you're just waiting for me to die. And, I mentioned that line before, but I think it bears bringing back up because that is, you know, there is truth in it. Logan is in some ways waiting for Xavier to die because he doesn't want anybody else to get hurt. And you have to ask the question, which would be more humane? And I'm not going to put this in a real life context. I'm going to keep it just purely within the universe, or anything within this particular setting. What would have been more merciful? What would have been more kind for Logan to do? Would it have been more merciful to wait for Xavier to die? Or would it have been better for Logan to do what his alternate self did and end Xavier's life? And that's a hard moral question to ask.
Yeah,
It
because
really is.
at the end, you're still hurting someone you care for.
But at the same time, you see how much pain they're in. And there really isn't a clear cut answer to that question. Because at the same time, yes, you have to live with that knowledge, and Logan's had to either bury or kill, particularly in the case of Jean from the alternate timeline, which was established at the end of Days of Future Past. It is an alternate timeline that he had to kill Jean.
It's just crazy. Like that. Like I'm pretty like the Logan timeline. That takes place after Days of Futures Past, correct?
Yes, the Logan time. Here's how they categorize Logan. It is a standalone film in a lot of ways, but I think a lot of people look at Logan as the conclusion to both to the Wolverine trilogy, but also to the universe as a whole. Now, you've got other standalone films that you can plug in there, like New Mutants and like the Deadpool films. But Logan is, in a way, that ending to that universe.
Yeah, it's
And
sad
as
how he goes back in time to try and try to save everyone, only for like something else to happen that still wiped everyone or mostly everyone off.
yeah, because we even find out in the course of this movie there have been no more natural born mutants because of genetic engineering through agriculture and through food and everything. No more mutants have been born except for the ones that are genetically engineered. But here's the thing, all those kids, eventually, they may have children of their own because there is I'm trying to look at this in I hope it is not perceived as a creepy mindset. But if you look at it from this perspective, there is a mixture of boys and girls who could potentially procreate and create more mutants. And then they would propagate further. It would take a while, obviously.
Yeah, it would take a while.
But the mutant population could potentially have a resurgence because of that group of kids. Because those kids will have kids, and those kids will have more kids, and then those kids will probably procreate with normal human beings, and you'd have a resurgence of the mutant population in the world. And it is even possible that they would be resistant to any of the genetic engineering that has been done by alkaline industries. So, But George, let me ask you this as well, and chat and anything. I'll put this question to you. Um, how did you feel about the? I mean, we kind of touched upon the villains a little bit here, but were was Doctor Rice and was Pierce and anything? Did they, as the antagonists, as the villains of the movie, did they carry the movie enough that you would consider them good, solid, well written, well thought out, well portrayed villains?
I wouldn't say they're the best in the X-Men universe, but I feel like one thing like the X-Men movies like have just done well in general is like they have these low-key villains that I think
Mhm.
still find a way to establish themselves as maybe not the best, but like very good antagonists. Like I feel
Mhm.
like X-Men villains kind of get lost in the shuffle of comic book movie villains when we talk about comic book movie villains, because you either talk about not just like MCU villains, but like villains from any Batman or Superman movie or any Spider-Man movie, like movies that are not even attached to a cinematic universe. But X-Men
Mhm.
villains, I feel like, really don't get talked about enough.
Would you put Pierce and Dr. Rice in the same category, say, as Stryker from X2?
See, Stryker
Or,
to me is probably the best X-Men movie villain, or like one of the best, in my opinion. I would say he's below
yeah.
them, but he's not that much below them because what they are going for, they're still able to find ways to accomplish. They still create something that ultimately will lead to like bad things. And their impact, like to me, it's always the impact. It doesn't really matter if you have powers. Like for example, if you look at someone like Zemo from Captain America Civil War, he literally didn't have to like raise a fist at a hero.
Hmm.
He was still able to find a way to accomplish what he wanted.
Hmm.
And to me, those are the villains that may not be the best, but they're sleeper villains. Villains that I think don't get enough recognition.
They work more psychologically than they do on a physicality level.
And they create threats that, whether it's, a conflict or, something that will actually like kill or hurt the hero, they find a way to get what they want done.
That is true. That is very, very, very true. And, you bring up Zemo, and that's true because he never even, as you said, he never lifts a finger. He doesn't land a blow. He doesn't do anything. He causes the heroes to fight amongst themselves. Now, granted, they do eventually come back. They do come back together in Avengers Endgame, and they do their thing there. But he does accomplish his goal for even however brief it was.
Because if the Avengers weren't divided for Infinity War, you can make the case that they could have had a better shot against Thanos.
Yeah, most definitely. I would.
But
I would have to. Mhm. Go ahead,
because he
George.
divided them, you can say like that made it easier for Thanos to accomplish what he wanted, even if he didn't know that would eventually happen.
Hmm. Very true. Well, and the other thing is the motivation of the villains. It's both on a small scale, but it's also on a larger scale because they're trying to liquidate Laura. They're trying to get her off the board, as they say, because they realized that having child soldiers wasn't viable because they had a conscience, they had a will, they had what makes a person human and makes them more than just a pure savage. And that's what you have with the alternate Logan, and everything, or the altered Logan. Is just the pure killing machine, the berserker, the unchained animal. And what Rice is essentially trying to do is trying to create a breed of controllable mutants that are just the killing machine that just you point them at the target and say, okay, go destroy the said target. And that's what they do. And that's all they do. They follow the orders to the T, and they feel no fear. They feel no. They feel nothing, essentially. And to see that countered against Logan and Laura, where you have Logan, like you said, we've mentioned several times already, at the end of his life, but he's still he tries to do the right thing, even though it does end up costing him his life. You also you have Laura, who's trying to figure out who she who she wants to be and how she wants to lead her life, and she has these two seemingly broken individuals who are trying to be guides for her in the persons of Xavier and Logan. And even though they're broken, they give her valuable insight. They try to be good role models for her. And in a lot of ways, they succeeded in doing precisely that.
Oh yeah, yeah, and it's funny because that kind of hits me more now as someone who actually does work with children to
Mhm.
like see like what kind of like role models that they are for her, and like I remember like just like thinking like the scene like after like Charles like dies and like
Hmm.
Laura says something to Logan, he's like just in shock.
Hmm.
That so like just like the little stuff like that where you see these characters like bonding, like especially like at that like dinner scene before the stuff
Hmm.
goes down. Like
Hmm.
to me, I feel like that stuff doesn't get talked about enough. Like everyone talks about how like this is like well what we thought was the last movie for Wolverine or this version of Wolverine, but no one talks about like the moments that really touched the heart that like showed these characters getting closer, that eventual dynamic between Logan and Laura.
Yeah, and they not only is there the emotional barrier between Logan and Laura, there's also a language barrier. And one of the things that they when they were casting for Laura or X-23, they wanted a actress who was bilingual, and they chanced upon Daphne Keene, and watching her in the footage or anything when they were shooting the film and watching her interact with Hugh Jackman and Patrick Stewart and the members of the crew and so on, and some of the other actors, she was just like she was just beaming and everything during those scenes and everything. It was really, they Jackman made the comment that she didn't want to leave stunt training because she loved it so much. It was so much fun and so exciting for her as a young actress to actually get to do this type of work. And excuse me, you really see a young actress really blossom in this film. I mean, as we mentioned before, when Zach was still here, child actors can be a hit they can be a hit or they can be a miss. I hope at some point that Vivian Lyra Blair, who played young Leia Organa in Obi-Wan, and Daphne Keane get to work on a project together, because those two actresses, I think they could do something really stellar together, because they were just in their respective roles, they were outstanding. I mean, I would not put it past Kevin Feige that when they do bring the mutants in to the MCU proper, I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if we do see an older Laura.
Oh
I would
yeah,
not be. I would not. I doubt this was going to be Daphne Keene's one and only appearance in a Marvel film. Granted, it's not part of the MCU specifically, but I think at some point we may see an older Laura, an older X-23, and I think that's gonna be a real treat, because for an actress of her range, and particularly her range at the age of 11, give her a few more years to really get a few more roles under her belt if she hasn't already, and I'm sure she has. And her craft and her abilities as an actress are just going to get better with time. So I hope, hey, Kevin Feige, if you're listening to this, or somebody clips this out, or if I clip this out myself, Kevin Feige, if you hear this, Get on the horn to Daphne Keene's agent and say, "Hey, we want her back. We want her back for the MCU. We want her back as X-23. What do we do? What do we need to do to make this happen?"
Yeah, and I'm not just talking like because you hear like people say, well, could like something like maybe Secret Wars bring like back like other like Marvel Legacy characters from other universes? It's like, is that a way to like bring her back, or like is there like other ways? Because I feel like with the multiverse, like there's like I feel like that's gonna be a way they're gonna bring mutants into the MCU. I mean, we already know like Logan's returning in Deadpool 3, and I have a feeling that's going to be like a multiverse kind of film. So I'm very curious. Like, is like are we going to see her like come back like through something? Like,
Well, I have. Go ahead, George.
could it be possible that she could appear in like Deadpool 3? Like, we don't really know like what's going on with these movies,
Mhm.
especially if they're exploring the multiverse. And like we already saw like not just like Hugh Jackman like returning in Deadpool 3, or like the fact that Ryan Reynolds Deadpool is continuing, but we've seen with like No Way Home and Multiverse of Madness, like
Mhm.
if the actors want to come back, they're gonna come back.
Well, and here's the thing too. I have long held the assertion, and I think this is how it's going to shake out. Really, that the multiverse is how they're going to bring different teams and different characters like the X-Men and the Fantastic Four into the main Marvel continuity. And they're going to be there to stay because they established that a character from another universe can exist at least for a time with No Way Home. Or no, not no, yeah, No Way Home. And that's not just the two other Peter Parkers, but also Eddie Brock. Now, granted, Eddie Brock got bounced back to his own universe, but there is still that fragment of Venom that's now in the main MCU universe at this point. So, but I don't want to venture too far off
Yeah.
from the main topic or anything. I don't want to overstay our conversation on Logan, but it's it is nice to go ahead, George.
I do have a question because like this to me was
Sure.
like a perfect ending. Are you
Mhm.
worried that like Deadpool 3 could like potentially like damage that ending of Logan, or like because like they're bringing Hugh Jackman back and you don't know like what like could this how this could affect the X-Men timeline and stuff, like if they do
Mhm.
go that multiversal like time travel route?
Well, they've already made mention that Deadpool 3 is going to take place prior to Logan. They've already stated that pretty clearly. So, no, I'm not overly concerned with it necessarily damaging the legacy of Logan by any stretch, the movie. Um, because here's the thing. The character of Logan, he can have a somewhat comedic edge to him, though it's a different brand of humor compared to Deadpool. We might actually see, I think, a little bit of a different change in tone. Now, this will be obviously still a comedic film. That's what Deadpool is primarily known for, as a comedic character. But I think we'll have a bit more of a. We might have a little more of a serious tone, not overly serious, but not as slapsticky as the other two Deadpool movies have been, particularly the first one. I still haven't had a chance to watch the second one. As I mentioned before, I own it on Blu-ray. It's just a matter of me staying down and making the time to watch it, which I might actually do either tonight or tomorrow.
That's the same thing with me and Prisoners.
Yeah, and I've at some point I do want to do reviews for the Deadpool films because I especially the first one I love. I absolutely love the first one. I never got a chance to see the second one when it came out initially a few years ago. But honestly, No, to just kind of come back to your question, no, I'm not really worried about Deadpool 3 ruining what Logan did so eloquently and so beautifully in terms of ending Logan's journey and his story. So,
Because like I know like one of the things like people were worried about when they heard that was because of like how Logan ended and how it ended for the character specifically. Like
mhm,
people are worried like it could undo that like ending or like that legacy of the character. Like I have no problem with him going with like humor because Hugh Jackman like has shown like he can do humor very well. And look,
mhm,
Wolverine has said many quips throughout the years. Like
mhm,
so like this wouldn't be like the first time like that he would be like doing something that's like funny. It's just like I mean I can see like maybe like this being another way for like that messes with the multiverse
mhm.
because like if you're gonna mess with the multiverse to protect someone because if the rumors are true that like let's say Deadpool is like trying to like protect Wolverine from like in his demise, it's like actions have consequences kind of thing.
Yeah. I don't think they're necessarily going to touch the events of Logan and Deadpool. I think this will be. I have a feeling this is going to be kind of a buddy film, in a manner of speaking, because if you look at the characters of Logan and Deadpool, depending on if this is Logan still in his prime, which I have a feeling it probably will be, there is the potential. You mean Logan's probably going to play the straight of the two. He'll be the straight arrow, and um, Deadpool will be the comedic foil of the pair. Think Abbott and Costello and how they functioned as a comedy duo, and look at the pairing of Logan and Deadpool in kind of that same manner. If you can follow my example. So, and I do want to say hello to the chat, Daniel Martin. Daniel, it's good to see you. Just
Hey, Daniel
please be
Martin.
careful. Be careful while you're driving. We don't want you to get in a wreck, and we don't want anything bad to happen to you. So, um, does my reference? Do you follow my reference at all?
Um,
Have you heard of Abbott and Costello?
yeah,
Abbott-
I've heard of Abbott and Costello. I remember
Okay.
like watching the Frank like the crossover horror movies with them.
Yeah, Abbott and Costello meet the Mummy. Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein. Abbott and Costello meet the Invisible Man. So on. Okay. All right. Then you follow what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I know some of my references can be a little dated, particularly someone of your age. It's not anything personal. It's just not
Yeah.
everybody's watched what I've watched.
I
So,
feel that way like at work because I'm like
mhm,
one of the older counselors at work and like so
mhm,
sometimes I feel like oh wow like no one's gonna get like this reference or remember what this was like 10 years ago.
mhm. No, I honestly I get that myself. I mean, because oftentimes I am the eldest in the room or in the department or whatever the case may be, and I am to my very bones, and I say this with no shame whatsoever. I am a hardcore nerd. I am a hardcore geek, and I study film. I study television shows. I study comics. I studied them as uh, thoroughly as I do scripture or when anything or the Bible or the Old Testament or my Hebrew, my biblical Hebrew or whatever the case may be. As I have said in the past, I am a font of useful and useless information. What I'm talking about tonight is kind of the useless information, but at the same time, it's the fun. It's fun at times. I think obviously it's fun all the time, unless you're talking about a really bad movie or a
Oh
bad
oh
TV
yeah.
show. So, but I have to say, this is a movie I've only watched 2 or 3 times since it came out back in 2017. And it's not because it is a bad film or a poor film. It is not by any stretch. But it is difficult to see characters that you have grown up with for so long and being portrayed in the way that Xavier and Logan are portrayed in this film. But at the same time, It's almost like witnessing a family member or a very dear close friend who has been suffering from a terminal illness finally be freed from their pain. And
Yeah,
I am not gonna put a theological spin on this to any extent, but simply to see that person be freed from that physical and emotional and psychological pain, even though you or yourself are going to have to deal with your own emotional pain, yours eventually will pass. They have been freed from theirs. And that's why, as wonderful a film as Logan is, it is also a very difficult film to watch.
oh, absolutely. Because like you, I've only rewatched this film like I think like a few times. I'm actually planning on rewatching it like this weekend because
Mhm.
like I want to because I'm in the mood to rewatch that and like the first two Deadpool movies. Like
Yeah.
I just haven't had the time to rewatch them after the Deadpool 3 announcement. But also like for someone like me who grew up in like the late '90s and like early 2000s, like being a kid like around like that age and like remembering watching these movies because these were like the comic book movies before the MCU, before the Dark Knight trilogy came out. Like these were the comic book movies for us kids, and then
Mhm.
seeing like your hero like after now that you're an adult, like you're seeing your hero dying. Well, like both heroes, like actually, like people like always forget, like Professor X's death, like that we've highlighted so many times in this video, like was
Mhm.
also like a major like shock and like shaken thing. To me, this was like the first like death I saw on the big screen where I was literally crying.
Yeah. You know, and that brings me to one of my favorite scenes in this film. And it's right after Xavier's death, and Logan has buried him. And Laura's trying to, in her own way, try and offer him some small amount of comfort by holding him, holding his arm, trying to hold his hand, but she can't even bring herself to hold his hand. And then he storms off, and he's got that shovel in his hand, and he just takes that shovel and he beats the ever living crap out of that pickup truck, the one they've been driving, and he's smashing it and he's swearing and he has no other way to express his grief, to express his pain, and it just utterly exhausts him, just completely and utterly exhausts him to the point where Laura has to drag him into that other vehicle that we see pull up with that family that whoever it is that's going fishing. And I think we have all felt that way at one point or another in our life, whether it was the loss of a family member or a friend or a traumatic experience in our life. I mean, the closest, and I don't mind sharing this because it's well past the point of caring. The closest I can equate that particular scene in Logan, where he's just taking the shovel and just smashing that truck to pieces, was when I left my ex wife, my first wife, and she divulged to me that she had been unfaithful after I left. And I was sitting in my car, and this well of rage just bubbled up inside me. And I had to pull off into a parking lot, and I just sat there for a good 10, 15 minutes and just yelled, screamed, shouted, slammed my hands into the steering wheel and everything else across the board and everything. Now, granted, I didn't cause the type of damage that Logan caused to that truck, but still, it just tore me apart inside. And that's how I equate what Logan was feeling in that particular moment. So, and I'll bring up Daniel Martin's comment here. A lot of people could really relate to Logan taking care of Professor Xavier, taking care of a parent or grandparent suffering from Alzheimer's or dementia. Yeah, and we've mentioned that, but I'm glad you did say that, Daniel, and everything, because that really does that. What Xavier is suffering from is one of those two diseases, most likely. And I think even Pierce questions Caliban in the back of that truck, and everything says, "What's the old man suffering from? Alzheimer's?" Or it's not. No, it's not It's not Pierce. It's Doctor Rice that that's questioning Caliban about what the disease is, the disease that Xavier has. You know, and there's a line of dialogue from Star Trek: The Next Generation, and I think that it does involve Patrick Stewart as Picard. He's like, for all of our technology, all of our advancements, the one thing we cannot prevent is the deterioration of one's own faculties. We can extend life to 100 years or more, but the one thing that is outside of our power, even in the 24th century, is causing the brain to degenerate, for us to slowly lose our mind, lose what really makes us us as a person. And to see a person like Xavier, who's known for his intellect, known for his abilities that come from his mind. And there's a really beautiful scene, and it's actually when they're on the highway and they're helping that family, the Munson family. And you see Xavier in just one moment calm the minds of those horses and get them to come back over to the truck. And then Logan looks back over his shoulder. You see that expression on Xavier's face, like, I am finally myself again after being lost for so damn long. So, George, your
Yeah.
thoughts on that? George, your thoughts?
Well, to like bring up like that moment with like Logan was like angry. It kind of reminded me of like when like something happened like when I was like a teenager. Now it wasn't a family member, but it was a friend's family
Mm.
member, and the it was like his cousin, and like when he passed away, just like how it happened, just like angered me and just bothered me because
Mhm.
I was like that was like my best friend, and like I was very close to his family, like not just like his parents, but like his cousins as well. Like his cousins were always over when I came by. So like this cousin that was a lot younger than me, like the fact how he died, which I'm not getting into the details with how that happened. And
Mhm.
it's odd because that kind of connects with Days of Future Past because like that was like I took my friend to go see that movie after like a few weeks after his cousin passed away because it was like a lot was on his mind. So it was like that was like the first movie that we saw together after all the stuff that went on. But just like remembering like the denial that I felt, like the anger that I kind of felt, just like reminds me of Logan in a sense.
Yeah. Well, and, movies for me, in particular, movies for me always seem to mark moments or benchmarks in my life. I've talked about this in the past and everything on videos and on live streams both. You know, Return of the Jedi was the last film we got to see as a family before my father passed on. And Batman Forever was a film that came out just like a few days after my grandmother, who was my mother's mother, who was a very big part of my life and everything for a lot of my childhood and the first few years of my teen years. And you know, I think that's the wonderful thing about cinema, really, is depending on the time and the place and the event, film can allow you to connect or even express feelings and emotions that at any other time you wouldn't have the means to do so. And Logan, as heavy and as hard a film as it is, I do honestly think on many levels it is a film that can help us to understand that there are no easy answers in life. Even if you are a character or a person like Logan or Charles Xavier or Laura. And that's the real power of cinema. And I have to say this, I haven't really talked about it online all that much, if at all. Watching the trailer for Ant-Man and Wasp: Quantumania really gives me a sense that this is not going to be like the previous two outings for the Ant-Man franchise. Do I believe there's still going to be humor in this? Of course, because Paul Rudd and Bill Murray are both very gifted comedic actors. But the
Absolutely.
thing, that people often forget is that Bill Murray has done dramatic work in his career. So I don't think the character we're going to be seeing is necessarily going to be a wholly comedic character. I think he is going to have a thread of seriousness or depth to him as well. And I think it's the same is true also for Paul Rudd's character Scott Lang, Ant-Man. And I will say this: I am chomping at the bit to see Jonathan Major back as Kang. I mean, we got a different version of Kang and Loki and everything, but this is going to be our first real introduction to the character of Kang the Conqueror. And I am deeply excited for it. And I know some people, I've listened to some friends, other YouTubers who have made the comment that this is probably just going to be another joke fest just because it's got Paul Rudd and Bill Murray in it. But I like to give the writers and the director and the cast more credit before I make those assertions. That's why, I don't do a lot of reaction film videos anymore in terms of trailers and so on, because you're reacting to a trailer, and there's not anything necessarily inherent with that. People do that as part of their content. That's their right to do so. I focus on the film and everything, and that's kind of been the direction I've been taking the channel over the last year or so, is just focusing on film and streaming series and old retro television series and so on, because I've come to realize that's where my real passion is, and that's where my enjoyment in the type of content that I want to do comes from. When I set out to do this series of reviews for the X-Men films, yes, this is a universe that I love, but this is also a franchise that has brought me a lot of enjoyment over the course of my life, that where it started back in the early 2000s, late 90s, up until when Logan came out a few years ago now. And Daniel says it perfectly. Films like this can be an emotional outlet. That's true. That is
Oh
very,
yeah,
very true.
absolutely.
So I feel like I've rambled on here for a few minutes. I'm sorry, George. So,
Oh,
well, I don't like to ramble because I don't want to let my guests ever feel like they don't
uh,
get a chance to say their piece.
no, no, I,
So,
I, I I always feel the same way because like as you know by now, like I feel like I'm the same way at work. Like I ramble a lot, but like everyone's just like
mhm.
fine with it. But
Well, because you say something of merit, you're not
yeah,
just rambling to hear yourself talk. You're expressing something of merit. You're expressing an idea that has value to it. So, but I think we are going to wrap up here in a few minutes. So, George, I'm going to let you give your final thoughts on Logan. Anything that you haven't been able to get a chance to get out yet, or anything that you just want to share, and then we'll kind of just put a cap on her. So, George, my friend, the floor is yours.
with Logan, like I said, this is probably one of my top 5 favorite superhero movies. Now, granted, I haven't like rewatched it a lot, like some of the other films that are in my top five, which are like The Dark Knight, Infinity War, Spider-Man 2, and Into the Spider-Verse. But having said that, like I definitely think it's a well-made movie. James Mangold did a fantastic job with it. Hugh Jackman gave the performance uh of his life when it came to like this character. Patrick Stewart, same thing. And yeah, like this was like one of those rare times that I've actually like cried and got emotional in the theater. And having like grown up with this version of Wolverine, I thought it was, probably one of the best conclusions to have. And I'm looking forward to seeing him return in Deadpool 3. And I think like he honestly wouldn't return if he didn't see anything special. And by the way, I love that Quantumanium poster behind you. Like I just like I noticed it, but I never got a chance to say it. I love it. But yeah, overall, Ambassador, I think you're muted.
Sorry. Yeah, that is the sorry. Okay, I'm not muted now. This is actually the teaser poster. We
Nice.
got this off of Disney. Disney. It's the Disney Movie Club. And within like an hour or so, it was already sold out. So you cannot get it off Disney Movie Club. The only place you can probably find it is on eBay if you're lucky. So, but yeah, I love. I change out my posters. This one, this okay. This one will never change
Yeah,
because this is
absolutely.
one of my all-time favorite movies. And then in the middle, you've got the Dune poster and everything.
Yeah, I
That is,
thought that was Dune.
but then but this one will often rotate out and everything because the last one that I had in there was the poster for Obi-Wan. Before that, I think was Cruella or something like that. No, it was Thor: Love and Thunder. Before
Yeah,
that,
I remember though you had Cruella like on there as well for a while.
yeah. Well, I love that movie and everything. But I'm really me and Mam and Bester are both we're both chomping at the bit for Quantum Mania to come out. We're also going to be going to see the 25th anniversary of Titanic. And before you ask, no, I have not seen Avatar 2, Avatar Boogaloo, aka Avatar Abyss 2 with big blue monkeys, aka Avatar 2, aka Jake and Natiri get down and have a bunch of kids.
Oh my god.
I'm just but for Titanic, yeah, we're gonna go see the 25th anniversary.
I might see it in theaters myself. I've never seen it in theaters before.
It's one of those movies you should at least experience once in theater. At least once. Now, I saw it numerous times. I was one of the people that got it to being the top movie of all time, even though it broke my heart that it took the top spot away from Star Wars. But at the same time, it was a good film.
I mean, I'm only a year older than the film, so I never experienced it in theaters.
Obviously, so but
Because
yeah, you definitely should if you're able to. At least once, if you're afforded the opportunity, go check out Titanic on the big screen because it is an experience.
yeah, that's one thing
And
I want to try to
there,
do more so for this year. Try to see older movies in theaters when I have a chance because
mhm.
Labor Day weekend, like it was a Saturday, it was like $3 ticket day. I saw Jaws in IMAX for $3 and I
all
loved it. And like I've always loved Jaws, but it was like it's hard to have a better experience watching Jaws after that.
I'm definitely going to put that on the list for reviews for this year. I'm already starting to compile my reviews for this year. I've actually got another review series I'm going to do, but I might do it a few months into the year and everything. But I got to put Jaws on the books because that'll be a fun one to discuss, particularly the very first one because the first one was always the best. Any of the sequels, I've never seen any of the sequels. I had no interest. For me, Jaws one.
Oh yeah.
That's it. So,
And I remember like one
but
time Sean O'Rourke once said like he saw it in like IMAX 3D and it's like that just tops regular IMAX if you can watch it in IMAX 3D. But yeah, no,
mm,
watching it in IMAX and I was kind of worried because the theater I saw it in, I had a bad experience early last year when watching Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Someone was like flashing a laser pointer at the beginning and a fight almost broke out. So I was kind of worried because I usually don't go to the AMC. It was at an AMC. that I saw both Doctor Strange and Jaws in. I usually go to my local theater where people are more behaved.
Mhm.
But no, everyone was
Yeah.
well behaved during Jaws IMAX. Even the kids that saw it loved it. I was like, I don't know if I would take a kid to see this, but I'm glad they had a good time.
That would have been a movie if I had been old enough, or well, if I had even been alive, because it came out before I was alive. If that was a movie I could have seen, if that was a movie that my mom and dad, or even my mom, dad, and grandmother, or my grandparents wanted to see, oh yeah, I would have been there too, and I would have been right there alongside them and everything. Because unless it had a lot of cursing or nudity in it, violence was more of a, I don't want to say a gray area, but it was something that was a little more forgivable and everything in the minds of my parents and my grandparents. So for Chief Brody to say, "Smile, you son of a bitch," my parents would have looked at me and said, "You heard what that guy said? You never say that till you're older." I've been like, okay. Yeah. Or even when Chief Brody says, "Why don't you come down here and chump some of this shit yourself?" I can do slow one ahead. But yeah, Jaws is one of my all-time favorite movies. Love that movie to death. I have to say, aside next to Logan, yeah, it's definitely in my top 20, most definitely. So, but just to kind of put a cap on the discussion tonight, um, Logan was the ending that we both needed and deserved for this character, even if he is coming back for Deadpool 3. It is the ending to, as the tagline for this review is, the end of a broken hero's journey. And that's what Logan is. He was a hero, but he was a broken hero. And that was true back in X1, is just as much as it was for Logan. And regardless of the performance or whatever goes on in Deadpool 3, that movie can't touch this one. Because it was grandiose in its simplicity. It was heartfelt in the performances that Jackman and Stewart and Keane and Holbrook and Richard E. Grant gave. And it allows us to deal with emotions that we could not potentially deal with in any other way. And that's why this film is a testament to the skill of all those that worked on it, James Mangold included, especially James Mangold. And I have to say it, James Mangold is in my top 10 of my favorite directors of all time. He is a great director. This movie just solidified that point for me. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. I do want to thank everybody who tuned in tonight. Anything, whether you were here live or you catch us on the replay, make sure, especially if you catch us on the replay, make sure you leave your comments down below with anything that myself or George or Zach brought up. I will be, I'll give another update and everything in the next week or so as to what's coming up next for the Ambassadorial Wing. We are closing in on 500 subs, so make sure that if you come across this and you do enjoy the discussion, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, so you can make sure you're notified when I go live or when I upload. And I'm going to be doing some more upload content. I recently did much to my surprise, quite literally, I did an upload just the other day, and no, I'm not bragging. This is genuine surprise from myself. I uploaded a short of a small part of our movie memorabilia collection, and it got over 1,000 views. And I'm like, holy crap! A 20-second short about just showing off some of our collection. I was like, so be expecting more of that, just not that particular type of video, not just showing off our collection, but I've got some ideas or anything for other shorts that I'm going to do in the future. So, but anyways, folks, you all have a wonderful evening. Thank you for being here tonight. And I hope, again, that if you catch us on the replay, you enjoyed the discussion. Y'all stay ambassadorial. And until next time, these are the ambassadors signing off.